everyone. We want to welcome you to Tour With Me Live, your monthly source for candid conversations on sexuality, kink, and sexual health. I am legendary Onyx, and tonight's episode is called Sex, Work, and Power. We're talking about sex work, the push for decriminalization, and and its rights in Illinois, and why it matters. If I can read. And so I'm going to kick it over to our co-host, King Vibes.
Good evening, everyone. I am King Vibes. I'm going to be co-hosting alongside the legendary Onyx. I also will be bringing comments and questions from the audience, so I'm happy to be here. Let's get it.
So today we have a phenomenal guest. So we want to ask you a couple of questions and get to know you.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
All right. How about you start by introducing yourself?
Sure. Well, I just want to thank you all for bringing me here to have an uncomfortable conversation about sex work. No, I'm just playing. My name is Raina Ortiz. My pronouns are she and her. I am a proud trans two-spirit woman. I am a current and former sex worker. Sometimes current, but mostly former. And I'm also an activist, advocate, just working for the liberation of all people, mostly Black and brown, trans and gender nonconforming communities in particularly.
Before you go, I got a question. What do you mean by two-spirit?
That's a great question, thank you. So I love to talk about this. So prior to the colonization of the Americas in the 1500s, when the Europeans came and slaughtered maybe over 90% of the indigenous people, indigenous tribes recognized multiple genders. There was man, woman, woman, man, man, woman. Like, it was really about how they allowed you to grow into yourself as a person. And then also, we became shamans. We were the mystical beings. We were the spiritual leaders and the guides. So my parents are indigenous people. And so when they recognized as a very little child that I was exhibiting both masculine and feminine, they jumped right into our historical and said, we've been on these lands for 20,000 years, and we love you, and this is what we are. So indigenous cultures in this land acknowledged gender diversity prior to the colonization of the Americas by the damn Europeans and the Spaniards. And then pushing, Christianity and Catholicism. We didn't believe in that. We didn't know any of that. We had our own religion, was the earth. And spirituality, So a documented case in 1564 was a documented case with a French explorer when he saw a gender variant person, and they were just like, of course it's a hermaphrodite, it's all this stuff, But the reason why, and thank you for asking, is for me, it's what saved me. My parents recognized it very young and said, this is our culture, and we love you. And you are our family, and we will embrace and guide you, and that's not a luxury that is afforded to all or many people. So I always say it was the connection to our historical component is what saved me in this modern day, So, well, thank you for asking that question. Thank you.
Absolutely. I done heard it, but I know the people didn't know.
Yeah, thank you. I hope it's a little snippet.
Yeah, thank you for that little trip down history lane. So Legendary mentioned that there's a bill that's in the process of being passed to decriminalize sex work. Why is this bill important to you?
Sure. So the bill is HB 3518, and it was introduced about 2 weeks ago. I am a sex worker. I've been a sex worker since I was 18 years old, and I just turned 45, 45 years old on the 13th. Oh, I'm so proud of that, you know? So when you think about trans, just trans in general, and when you think about like life expectancy for trans people, and particularly Black and brown trans women, you know, it's questionable. But, you know, people are like, oh, it's 35 years old. And when you think about that, you know, to excel that by a decade. And I've been trans, you know, since I was 13, 93, 94, openly as a trans person, and you know, in the city of Chicago. So to make it to 45 years old and still have love in my heart and joy in my spirit and hope for humanity, it's a win. You know, so I say my age with pride. I'm 45 years old.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
And let me just say, your energy is radiant. So to even go through as much as you've been through and to be 45 and to have this outlook is such a beautiful perspective. So I definitely want to recognize that. So let's set the stage. According to Sophie Sherry in the Chicago Sun-Times, January 13th, 2025, Illinois lawmakers are looking to fully decriminalize consensual sex work, which is a huge milestone if it passes. Organizations like Equality Illinois and SWAG have worked for years on this, but some might ask, why should I care? So let's break down why it matters to all of us. Some of the key points are the impact on marginalized communities, especially Black and brown, trans women, etc. In addition to the legal details, such as removing criminal penalties, clearing old records, establishing a sex workers' bill of rights, in addition to violence prevention, where 45 to 75% of sex workers worldwide face violence, according to the American Journal of Public Health. And lastly, the stigma reduction to emphasizing the safety and aligning the laws and respect for sex workers in working in that particular industry.
Yeah, I love that question, and I've been getting it a lot. Like, why now? Why now? It's what do they call it? The old profession in the books or whatever. I think now is the perfect time to talk about it. You know, I like to talk about as a society. You know, like, and it's kind of corny, but it's true. Like, you know, none of us are free until we're all free. All of us. You know, and I live by that. And if we're not bringing up with us when we talk about intersections of like marginalized people, women in general, trans women, women of color, indigenous women, you know, and if we talk about liberation and safety and all those things, like, and to be in 2025 and not have the ability to openly talk about sex work, something that I'm sure everyone knows is going on in some way, shape, or form. And I think for us to say, right now is the perfect time to do it, you know? And to give a shout out to Equality Illinois, you know? So I've been in advocacy since I was a teenager, advocating for gender variant rights since high school, you know, here in Chicago. And then getting into sex work and then realizing that a large portion of trans women were engaging in sex work. You know, when I got into the community in 1999, when I started meeting trans women, and then sitting in a room of 25 trans women, and, you know, 95 out of 25, I would say 20 of them or 22 of them were all sex workers. And you start to think, like, why are so many trans women, and particularly Black and indigenous trans women, subjected to sex work? And I think that's a deeper question than anyone can even imagine. It is about, you know, misogyny, it's about poverty, it is about repression. It's a lot of things that forced trans women into the role of sex work. So Equality Illinois, I work with in different bills. We passed other bills that help trans women kind of navigate through the city. And we had a talk with the CEO, Brian, and I said, come on now. Marriage equality, that's great, you know, but why are we talking about the thing that is impacting trans women so importantly and so like deeply is about the policing of our bodies. And we're talking about that with abortion rights and Roe versus Wade, and then the policing of women's bodies and bodily autonomy. Why can't we talk about that for gender variant people, like bodily autonomy, my body, my right? If two consenting adults agree to transactional sex, why is it the government's business, or why is it the police business to kick down my door and lock me up and give me a case, and then you get evicted from your apartment, and then it's just so brutal, you know? So for us, with the help of Equality Illinois, we put our bill together. It was 3.5 years. We put together the SWAG, which is the Sex Workers Advisory Group. Black and brown, current and former sex workers, cis men, cis trans women, also just a bunch of us, and we really, like I said, 1,000 meetings and hundreds of conversations and 1,000 meetings, whatever. But it's been just a large amount of conversations and disagreements and coming to consensus. And at the end of the day, for us, it was about safety for the sex workers. It's already hard to be so stigmatized in this society, but then to have the fear of policing, it just made it so much worse. And it's really a dedication to the community that we're serving. And it's been a tremendous taking, but we're so proud of it. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it sounds like you really should be proud of the work that you've done. Great job.
Yeah, gracias.
So we're going to get into this box over there. Before we go a little deeper, just a little deep, go on and let's pleasure yourself respectfully and responsibly. All you have to do is snag your box and get tested for a free STI test from the comfort of your own home. Now roll the footage.
Hey, Michelle, what are you doing tonight?
Hey, Eric. Project Vida is doing a toy with me party on Zoom.
Nice. What's that all about?
They focused on this and sex-positive topics, and they're going to be offering free home HIV testing kits through Sinai Infectious Disease Center.
HIV home test kits? How does that work?
So they're going to share a link in the chat where you can sign up to get your home test kit.
Okay, I've been wanting to get tested, but I didn't really want to leave the house.
I feel you. You just give them your contact info, and someone from Sinai will contact you to send out your free home HIV testing kits. They'll put it in an unmarked box to your mailbox.
Okay, then I do the test by myself? This sounds kind of difficult.
It's not that hard. Once you get the test kit, it's pretty easy. Just follow the step-by-step directions, and you'll get your results in about 20 minutes. Let Sinai know that you took the test and what your results were, and you can even call them and they'll walk you through it. Sinai will then contact Project Vida to let them know that you took the test, and they'll send you out a complimentary gift bag.
Can they also help me access PrEP and any other sexual health needs?
Yeah, of course. Sinai partner up with Project Vida to provide sexual health education, prevention tools, and medical treatment to the community. And they have lots of services too.
Sounds awesome. I definitely want to go and get tested at home, and I'll do the tour with me party too.
All right. So, right now, I have a question. Okay, so often when people think of sex work, they think of street sex work or quote-unquote prostitution. However, the adult entertainment industry, such as porn, including OnlyFans, are also a major part of the sex work industry. How do you feel the stigma around online sex work versus in-person sex work differentiate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in general, in 2025, there's still a lot of stigma about sex. You know, parents don't want to talk to their kids about sex. There's all these uncomfortable conversations, and I think the stigma of sex needs to alleviate itself. You know what I'm saying? Like, kids need to know where we've come from. They need to know how the body works. Like, we have to be truthful, you know? And you came from a bird in the sky and a stork and all those things. Like, it's just wrong. And I think we carry, as a society, we built so much stigma about sex. and then it goes deeper into gender, and it goes into all these things. Like, one, I think we need to start educating our children appropriately, respectfully about sex in general. And of course, now it leads into the conversation of sex work. And I think sex work is a modern term that we're kind of encompassing all forms of transactional sex, but there is a lot of stigma on the sex workers that still work the stroll, the streets, we call it the stroll. And actually it's probably one of the hardest forms of sex work, the most dangerous form of sex work, the most, just rough, and I believe that form of sex work is what everybody thinks about when they think about sex work. Like, oh, the girl in the corner just kind of walking around half naked, and sure, that's kind of a large portion of sex work has been. But in this modern time, it's cam shows, it's OnlyFans, it's like evolving into like this digital world where sometimes, physical contact is not even necessary, but that still doesn't take away that it's still sex work. I think for the girls or for the people that are walking the stroll at night at 3 a.m, like, gosh, I think the society needs to empathize, understand, and then of course, like, where's the resources, and not to like shameless plug, but at our organization, I work at Task Force and I run an LGBT space on the west side of Chicago. I've been there for 10 years. And we are like pro-sex work, and we have a sex work support group called STEPS. And it's, sex workers come in, cis heterosexual women come in because they know that we are pro-sex work, not just trans or LGBT, and we treat them just like anybody else. And we want you to be a safe sex worker. We want you to, here's condoms, here's, information, here's an employment program, here's all these things. But if you are choosing to engage in sex work, we are going to support you however we can as an organization. And I think it's really just about the ramifications of sex and how we as a society make it so taboo and bad when we all came here because of sex, And I think the stigma of like streetwalkers or walking the street and all those things, like, I think we should just be a little bit kinder, honestly.
I agree. And so, in considering what you're saying in regards to society being more kinder in regards to the sex work industry, what about those who don't identify with the industry, in regards to people who, can be a little bit more reserved when it comes to their sexuality? Why is the bill that is in the process of being passed even important to them?
I think when it boils down, I hope when people understand, it's really about safety. Like safety. The guy cleaning your window on the 85th floor, there's OSHA and there's all these things that are put in place to keep them safe, and in all these kind of ways. Decriminalizing sex work for us as a group, as SWAG, as Equality Illinois, as our collective is really about safety. The person that is out there at 3 a.m, fighting against tremendous, things, at the end of the day, shouldn't be harassed or abused or victimized by a system that is being paid to protect them, Decriminalization of sex work gives it back to the sex worker. A lot of times we talked about statistics where sex workers are assaulted. What is the likelihood of a sex worker now going to the police when they've been assaulted by a client? What is the likelihood of a sex worker, like reporting abuse? It's not very high. And when it's decriminalized, if we see someone being trafficked, which is a terrible thing, and it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about adult consensual sex work. We're not talking about human trafficking. We're not talking about being pimped. We're not talking about those things, We just want to make sure that, one, the sex worker is safe and also feels supported to be able to report crimes against them.
So one other question before
Yeah,
we
I love
toss
that.
it over
Thank you.
to Legendary to
Yeah.
start a more fun section of the show. One other question. Can you explain what the difference is between decriminalizing sex work and legalizing sex work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So decriminalizing it is just really making it a non-arrestable offense. Like a cop can just roll by you and doesn't have to pull you over and then harass you and then just assume that you're a sex worker, even maybe if you're not sex working, and then arrest you. That's decriminalizing. Legalizing, which we're not trying to do here in the state of Illinois, we are about decriminalization. Legalizing is about, building protocol and procedure and things that will not sometimes, will become a barrier. If you have to go and you need to register at City Hall as a sex worker, it opens up to discrimination and stigma. And then if you have to do it every 6 months, we have to think about the marginalization and the people that are mostly impacted. What is the likelihood that we are going to follow through with a multitude of, protocol to get our sex workers, support, pass. And then if you don't have it, there goes the policing again. Oh, now we found out is illegal, and now we're gonna arrest you because you don't have those kind of things. We want it to be, honestly, just easier. The sex workers are out here, we're out here. We don't need to be victimized or harassed by the police. We want it to just be an unarrestable offense, as long as there are two consenting adults engaging in transactional sex, we don't feel we have to worry about the police or the policing of our bodies.
What do you mean by transsexual?
Transactional, like a transaction, So if me and the client agree to an amount that is reasonable for both parties, that's a transaction. I'm 18. I'm over the age of 18. I'm consenting to this transaction, and we're gonna do what needs to be done. And I'm gonna get the coin first, and then go do what you need to do. Always get the coin first.
Get the
Jesus,
coin.
And so that's what I say. Two consenting adults engaging in transactional sex should not be an arrestable offense, and we're trying to and will decriminalize it in the state of Illinois.
So I'm a little blonde, and I got another question.
I love it.
What about when you look at someone says, what's the difference between a sex worker and me going on a date? Isn't that the same as having a transaction?
Sure. I think that's a good question, because I think people make assumptions, and you shouldn't make assumptions about anything. There's a lot of assumptions about sex work and sex workers. Sometimes it's not even really about sex.
Yeah.
There's a lot about attraction, stimulation, and relationship building. One of my oldest clients that I had was for, maybe over 15 years. And it got to the point where it was really just, it could have been a date if he wasn't so afraid to publicly date a trans woman, and that's a whole other conversation when you talk about why so many trans women engage in sex work. It's because the society makes men ashamed to date trans women. And they rather just say, well, I was supposed to take her on a date and scared that my friend's gonna see me, and my uncle's gonna see me, and next thing you know, my whole family's gonna know. I'd rather just give this girl her fee. We have a good time, and I'll see her every so often, and I have to cut out the date. I don't have to pay $200 at, Fogo de Chao and all this stuff. It's really open. Like, this is what I want as a sex worker. These are my boundaries, and people don't think about that level. Sex workers, the majority that I have met, and this is just in my own experience, were super organized. We made appointments. You know what I'm saying? Like, we had quotas. We had, it's a business. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have a quota this week. I need to see this much. This is the rate that I'm charging. I'm not gonna compromise. And that's what I'm going to do. It's very business, but whatever anybody's assumption about sex work, there's something that we all used to joke about. It's like, well, what about the married women that are like, oh, I want that new washer and dryer, and that washer and dryer costs $2,000, and I I'm gonna suck that dick for that washer and dryer. That's it. But they're married, so that's something different. You know, I want that new car. I want that addition to my home. You know what I'm saying? And I might throw it back in the air for a little bit for my husband. You know, like, there's a lot of different variations that people think about when it comes to sex work or what sex work looks like. But I think as a society, we should be more open-minded about it because it goes on way more than people think about. And if it wasn't so stigmatized, starting as little children about sex and like, no, you know, like, where did you come from? You came from my belly button. It was something crazy. Like, it starts there and it ends where a man feels he needs to pay or a person needs to pay for, you know, a fantasy, you know, so it's a lot of different variations.
Okay. We want to go a little light because this is heavy. And so I'm going to ask everybody up here. I'm going to start with King Vibes.
All right.
Have you or would you ever consider doing OnlyFans or something of that nature?
Absolutely. I've considered it. I'm contemplating it. I got content created that I haven't really posted yet. But I think for me, it's also about a celebration of my body and me owning my sexuality. I grew up in the church, so I grew up with a lot of religious restraints and the do's and the don'ts and the putting on your chastity belt and all of that other stuff. And so in that regard, when I began to consider OnlyFans, it was for two reasons. Number one, for the monetary reward, because look, I am degree, and I'm looking to this camera. I am degree, and it is a shame before God that, you know, there are people out there making significantly more than me. So I say, if you can't beat them, join them. Again, with my content, I want to, you know, have some anonymity by covering my face and tattoos and so forth. But get that bag. I'm with you. Get that coin. You know what I'm saying? So yes, to answer your question.
So, Ms. Raina?
Yes.
Now, I know that you have participated in the private work. Would you be open to videoing your wonderful, wonderful work?
Say what you want to say. Okay. You know, okay, so I engaged in sex work in various degrees for 2 decades almost, you know? And then I started as walking the streets to traveling the whole country as an escort for a very long time. And only very people that are very close to me know, like, I'm really taking a break, you know? I've been just kind of like being able to step away from sex work in the last couple years and kind of like, so the answer is not right now. I'm not saying that I won't in the future. I think right now I'm experiencing something that I haven't experienced in a very long time, which is like the power of no. I don't have to.
Speak on that.
Yeah, it's the power of no. Do you want to have sex? No. Do you want to have money for sex? No. You know, I'm giving myself. It's the healing process. You know, I said I turned 45 years old. I've been engaging since I was 18 years old. Like, in the last couple of years, I've been very fortunate enough to be able to take a step back and just kind of support sex workers in a different way, in a political way, in a resource way, in a more social support way. But me personally, I'm in the era of like the healing, my body, my choice, and all that stuff where I think a lot of people don't get. And that's where I am, honestly, and I'm very proud to be here in this space. And I tell my participants and my kids at the space, like, no, Miss Raina ain't giving that, she ain't giving it up no more, you know? and it's a great place to be. And I would never say that I won't ever. I will if I want to, you know? I will when I'm ready to, you know? But As of right now, she's fine.
Okay.
What about you?
Huh?
What about you? Yeah, I need to know.
I'm an innocent virgin.
Oh, Lord.
But
A version of what?
today, this whole weekend, yeah.
Didn't you just win something?
We'll
What you
talk
win?
about that later. But but if we're going to be honest about it, to an extent, I didn't make that much. So let's rewind. So in 2020 is when I pledged Onyx. And when I was setting up my Facebook page, that's why on Facebook I'm Lawman, because if I decided to do
Content creator.
when I was trying to become a content creator, I was going to use the name Lawman because law is 10th of the law, and so you got to respect the law. So that was my mentality, and when I tried to set up an OnlyFans and a Just for Fans page, it said you have to. What I heard was you have to scan your driver's license, and it kept saying I wasn't a real person, and I was like, okay, God, I get it. I ain't gonna do it. But howsoever, I may or may not have a ChatterBait page.
All right. What is the Lawman?
Okay.
Well, my other thought is I touch myself for free.
Cool.
And on one of my social medias, if people want to see,
That 25-minute orgasm that gave you a concussion.
there are clips for free.
Oh, work. Good.
However, with something like ChatterBait, people pay you for private rooms. And so if I'm going to talk about my 25-year-old self, no, I was about 22. There was this guy I thought was just so beautiful. And so I would spend money outside of my budget to watch him jack off with himself. And I was like, wait a minute, fool. You making less than $15,000 a year, and you're paying someone $20 to $150 a week just to watch someone to release. Well, I mean, I'm not 45, but I'm also not 25. Well, back then, Pornhub and all of that wasn't a thing. So it was like, this was back when dial-up was a thing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Dial-up and like my parents had an answering service, like an answer machine, where it was an app where you could like record messages when someone was online. Long story short, I would just get online and pay money to watch this man ejaculate.
Yeah. So you understand the allure of it.
Oh,
It's so alluring. And it's so like...
and I think it wasn't even alluring. It unlocked something in me sexually
Good.
that physically he was my type. He was beautiful to me. And I enjoyed watching what he was doing. But it was the fact of why it felt like I ain't had no money. Fool, you giving somebody else your money that you
Okay.
can't afford.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that and giving us that other perspective, because there are two sides to this. It is the client and it is the worker. And when you talk about this coming together because of what you're feeling and the sexuality based of it and the allure of it, it's really pulls people in, and whatever floats your boat, we're all, none of us are exempt from engaging in some form of sex work. Either you are the client or you are the girl, or the person, and you can be both sometimes, and that's okay, and it's those conversations that need to be had. One of my closest friends was a client of mine for 15 years, and I understand why he's my client and I am his girl. Like, it's just, there's a lot of things to it and more than what people would understand, and thank you for sharing that part of it.
Well, for me, it transitioned to this is someone that I can have conversations with, who I can be open with the fact that I like a guy.
Yeah.
And then I started realizing I'm paying this stranger that doesn't know me money so that I can have a conversation with them that is a random conversation that I could have just jumped on the party line and had the same damn conversation.
And what's interesting is that that's still going on even today, even with all of the online and visual services. There are still people that would pay you just to have a conversation with you on over the phone or via FaceTime, or for you to send some dirty drawers or socks. Feet.
I will open a feet thing before I do a OnlyFans. I have
I've been
beautiful,
thinking
beautiful
about
feet.
the feet.
I love
I've
it.
been thinking about
Gorgeous.
The feet and the underwear. Feet and the underwear. I could do that.
You put some you moisturize your feet. Put some.
Yeah, oh my God, it'll slather them up. So if you're watching, baby, these feet are moisturized, honey. She'll sell her feet before she does it OnlyFans, I promise you.
But I mean, and then even during the pandemic, there were people who had an OnlyFans, and all they were doing on the OnlyFans was reading to people.
What?
Yeah.
Listen, you could have had story time, and people was paying for story time during the pandemic.
Because it's about companionship. Companionship. Think of the key word is companionship. Regardless if it's heavy sex, regardless if it's a light conversation, regardless of what it is, it's another person paying for the companionship of someone else that maybe they would not have access to unless they were paying them. You know what I'm saying? And once again, it goes back to the stigma of sex and the stigma of sex work. It is so broad, and I think in 2025, 2024, and since 2020, like, the word is spectrum. There's a spectrum. Gender is a spectrum. Sexuality is a spectrum. The level of companionship that you need from another human being is on a spectrum. And I think the more rigid things become, the disconnected we become as people. We all need some form of human interaction, and it all looks so different, So I think we really need to start having conversations openly about sex, about companionship. What is a relationship? What is sexual transaction? What is this kind of stuff? And if we're not having it, we'll be on a panel in another 20 years talking about the same thing, So destigmatizing is important, and having real open conversations about who I connect with and how this feels.
All right, Raina. So I want to jump into something a little fun with you, since we're talking. So I hear you talking a lot about connection and intimacy and so forth. So we're going to play a little game of this or that.
Okay.
All right. So question. Do you prefer anonymous sex or intimately connected sex?
I like both. I like both.
Tell me more.
It depends on my mood. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a very sexually liberated person. I really enjoy sex. You know, and anything when I was younger, it was a very anonymous sex. I loved it actually. You know, I enjoyed the mystery of it. I enjoyed the surprise or the disappointment, or you know, whatever. But I did and still do enjoy, you know, a hit it and quit it kind of thing. It's okay, you know.
How about you, Legendary?
No.
No, to which one? Anonymous or intimate connection?
No, I can't do. No, I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna say I can't. But depending on where, I feel like where I am in life, I have to have more of an intimate connection. I don't mind anonymous sex, howsoever. It also depends on like mentally, physically, emotionally where I am, because there will be no yeast. The bread ain't gonna rise.
Oh, you like all that soft stuff.
So like,
I'm sorry.
no, but like if I don't
Stimulate.
find any connection with the person, there's
Wow,
Fair enough.
that's beautiful.
no.
That's beautiful.
No,
I think it's
it's
beautiful.
not.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that because, again, I think for me, intimate connection kind of speaks to me feeling able and vulnerable enough to give you more of a sexual interaction. I'm one that I am sexually aroused by my mood, kind of like with what you were saying. If I'm not feeling you, if even no matter how attractive you are, if the connection isn't there, then my sexual arousal is going to probably be at a -3, you know. But I do have another question. This is a good one. Do you prefer professional porn, studio porn, or amateur porn?
Who, me?
Either one.
I would say it really depends on what I'm trying to do. So like,
Give me an example. What do you mean?
so like if me and my partner are watching together, I need the studio, I need the lights, camera, action. But if we're gonna rewind to me in my early 20s, I don't mind amateur because I like when I'm walking down the street or going to certain locations and I see someone that I watched last night.
Oh my. Okay. How about you, Raina?
It's the mood. Everything is about my mood and how I feel it. What is it pushing to, you know? So it's really about my mood.
I think I prefer amateur porn. I think amateur porn gives me more of that real life feeling versus that lights, camera, action feeling, you know, stop, go, pose. I prefer you just go at it, bump the camera, get your life, and when you have that type of connection where you're not even focused on the camera. Because one thing I hate about porn is when they're sitting there holding the camera, trying to be the director and participate at the same time. That's raggedy. But if you just set that camera down, get your life, blank out, man, that ain't nothing like amateur porn. That studio porn can be a little
Howsoever,
If
we look at just modern technology, it's different from when we were young.
Fair enough.
And they was recording it on the VHS tapes.
Fair enough.
With the big giant camera that you gotta hold, versus
But even
the
with a
iPhone.
cell phone and you trying to get, put the phone down.
Listen, but like there are ways that, but see, that's someone who doesn't know what they're doing. So like you can have different angles and you can do that, and then do that, and then do that, and
Oh, well,
and you can cut and paste. and-
No, I want it raw, just like right there. Like, don't cut it. Let me
But-
see the mistakes. Let me see. Let me see all of it.
But see, that's for me. That's also like the perfectionist in me.
Yeah,
And then also, I studied theater.
gotcha.
And on top of that, there's also the aspect of I did a play one time, and the line was, I am not a perfectionist. I just want it done right. And so my issue is that sometimes with amateur porn, you don't look like you're being pleased. You look like you're pleasing the person. I believe when it comes to sex, I believe in a legendary experience.
25 minutes.
No, but it's more than just the orgasm. I believe that if you're having sex right with the partner, that a couple of days later, I can close my eyes and touch myself and think of all the things that I did to you, how much you made me feel, how wonderful you tasted, how wonderful you felt, how juicy you are.